Welcome to Healing Powers TV. I'm your host Laura Powers, and I'm so pleased today to have Jan Rupp here to talk about astrology, which is just one of many things that she does. So I'd love it if you just start, Jan, and talk about what it is that you do.
Yes. Well, I have had a practice, a healing practice for 32 years. And one of the reasons I love astrology is that it's one of the vehicles that really goes directly there. It's based on the moment of birth and where everything is in what's called in astrology the ecliptic, which is the path of the earth around the sun. So it only include, you probably heard the big uproar about Ophiuchus, which came up recently about the new constellation. Well, it's been known about, it's used in Vedic astrology and many other forms of astrology, but it's not directly on the ecliptic, and Western astrology is based there more, where Vedic astrology tends to be more about the location even of the earth, and we're looking into delving into the personality, into the character, and then deeper esoteric astrology delving into this mysterious thing we call soul.
Okay. So already there's a few different kinds of astrology that have been mentioned. So let's just talk a little bit about which kind you focus on and what the other kinds are. So there's Western astrology, Vedic astrology, and Eastern astrology.
Yes, well, there are many, and there are many branches from that. There are the Babylonians, the Chaldeans, the Egyptians, the Mayans. It goes on and on. It's a very ancient science, and we have found even moon charts that go back as late as 32,000 BC. So again, this is very ancient, has very deep roots. Many people think it's just the lightweight thing that we see in the columns in newspapers or magazines, which are usually quite trivial because the astrological wheel is very complex and has many placements in it. And a lot of it is based on the mathematical, literally on mathematic configurations between the planets and the moon and many other things in the chart. So from that, we can read where our innate blockages or our emotional blockages are, where our gifts are, what we want to express within our life, etc. In fact, I want to give a little quote by Carl Gustav Jung, who is one of the great deepeners of Western psychology, one of the great forefathers, etc. And what he said about astrology is, we are born at a given moment, in a given place, and like vintage years of wine, we have the qualities of the year and of the season, and which we are born in. So again, astrology is the way to really look into that. What does that mean? And the things that look the hardest in a chart are not a fatalistic thing. They're actually our challenges to grow through in this life. So it encourages, it also adds more spark to our personality, etc.
Right. Oh, I like that. A couple things you mentioned. One, the comparing of us to wine. We are absolutely affected by where we were born and everything around us, so it totally makes sense that that would impact who we are as people and what our challenges are. And how does astrology work? Because I think that's something a lot of people will look up their horoscope in the newspaper and it's kind of entertainment, like you mentioned, just kind of fluffy for fun. But what are the nuts and bolts of Western astrology and how we know what's in our chart? And
well, it's again based on the moment we're born, and whatever's on the horizon, the exact degree, every sign has 30 degrees, so it's whatever is on that ascendant, or the rising sign, as some people refer to it as, is that initial impulse. It's the first breath of life, and it's something we sort of breathe in and we want to live out through the maturation, through the vintage process, becoming that fine wine throughout our lives. We live that out. There's many steps. There's 12 houses, it's called, in an astrological wheel, and they all rule a different part of our lives. Like the first house is about the personality, our initiative, etc. Second house is about our talents, our possessions, where we really feel we can take our talents and turn them into a profession, even, or a career of some type. And we could go all the way around, but I don't want to spend the whole time. Each one really looks like a little pie wedge, and it all has very distinctly different things that happen until you come around all the way to the top of the chart, which is really about you and the public's eye, and how you bring all the power, all that fermenting process, you might say, through life and bring it out into the public. And it's about your reputation and how you're seen by your public, etc.
And now each house is affected, or I'm not sure what the correct term is, but or ruled by a planet, is that right?
Yes, and the planet is not always in the house. Sometimes you'll have empty houses, it seems, but there's always something on that beginning, which is referred to in astrology as a cusp. So say you have Virgo on the cusp of your second house, that house is ruled by Mercury, because Mercury rules Virgo. So again, I don't want to get too complicated today, but even if it looks like there's a huge part of the chart that's empty, it just means that's not the major areas that we need to really grow in. It doesn't mean we won't be able to function in those. It means those are the places that are not difficult ultimately for us to really be challenged in or developed in. So we have these 7-year cycles. Saturn's always present, but it comes into serious aspects every 7 years. Probably the most infamous one of them is the first Saturn return, which for most people is between the age of 28 and 29, and suddenly they're feeling a little cut off, and they don't know exactly what they want to do with their life. They keep saying, okay, what is it, what do I need to express? So it's usually a year to year and a half, very serious thinking about where am I headed.
Sounds very appropriate to me, having been through that, so yes.
Yes.
So that brings up, what are some upcoming astrological influences that people that are watching might be interested in, either in the near future or in the longer distance?
Yes. Well, I think mostly we've got enough within this next few years to talk about, because this is a very intense time.
It seems like it. Yeah, there's a lot happening.
All the outer planets have changed signs, which is unusual about the same time, because they all have very different cycles. Like I think Capricorn, Pluto's is 248, and we don't have to go through all the years. So when they suddenly meet up and change signs, all within a couple of years, is a very rare phenomenon. So we had in 2008, I think it was, Pluto moving into Capricorn. It's called a transit, and that's when we started seeing the world economy is collapsing, and that's because Capricorn rules big corporations, banks, the big churches, all this what we consider the authorities and the bosses. So Pluto's the great transformer. So the minute literally it touched Capricorn, the French economy went down. It retrograded, which means it moved backward from our perspective. It's not really going backward, but from the way we see it in its orbit, it looks that way. It left for a few months, and when it came back and touched the day it touched the American economy, started to go down.
Wow.
Now we've just had a new transit of Uranus into Aries, and Uranus is the freedom fighter, the liberator, etc. And Aries is the pioneer and the one that wants to blaze its own path and look what's going on in the world.
Yeah,
all in the Middle East standing up, people standing up in Wisconsin, I mean, people standing up in Africa, etc. So we're going to see that. That's going to happen for another several years. And Neptune is just coming to Pisces, which it's what it rules. Neptune rules Pisces. So that can be for some people very transformative, transcendental, one could really say. That's a bigger word with Neptune. Transformative is more Pluto. Uranus is liberating. And Neptune is transcendence, but it's also, there might be more designer drugs and things like that, because it's also a desire to escape into fantasy, but also more creative people may come forward this time. So this is really, there's more going on, but all this is going on. Pluto is also squaring Uranus 7 times until 2015, which is huge revolutionary cycles. And of course, we're already seeing the revolutions going on, and it will intensify. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on currently. I was just thinking, woo, this is the time to ask that question.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot going on. Everybody needs to really see where they want to go instead of reacting, really act from the purity of who they actually are, instead of being taken over by all these forces that will be very intense.
So it sounds like there's a lot, just overall, of transformation, evolution, huge changes, which I think we can all feel.
Of the old,
disruption, and that's going to continue through 2015?
At least, yes. It may continue more, but this intense thing I just spoke about goes through 2015, yes.
Okay, so we're not going to settle down anytime soon.
Not anytime soon, I don't think.
Okay, that makes sense.
And how we handle it is really up to us.
Yeah.
And we forget that, because we get in, like Neptune rules things like mass hysteria. So therefore, it'd be easy too. But again, if we take a breath and say, okay, where am I?
I think that's a good tip in general. You know, we can't always control our circumstances, but we absolutely can control how we react to them.
Yes.
Yeah, and getting hysterical never helps.
Yes, although every now and then it's unstoppable.
I suppose, yeah.
We're all human after all.
So this is really fascinating stuff. If people want to learn more about astrology for themselves, so how do you recommend they go about doing that?
Well, actually, they could call a local astrologer. They could just, look for a beginner astrological book. Make sure it's a really good basic. And you can ask friends around you, or you can call me and ask me, etc. There are a few. It's hard to get grounded in astrology if you don't start with the absolute basics, because it's so multi-layered and leveled and moving all the time that if you start in some of those upper layers, it's like nothing's going to make sense for years. So that's the most important thing. Again, someone could have a chart reading, take things in the newspaper and the magazines with a grain of salt.
I think that's a great point. To get an advanced book on astrology would be kind of like learning math and trying to pick the calculus book.
Yeah,
that's where you need to learn like basic arithmetic.
Addition, etc. Yes.
And I think I fall into that trap myself, where I got a book that was just too advanced and just got confused. So thanks. That's a very good tip. So you touched a little bit about this in the beginning, but how can people use astrology in their daily lives, you know, just regularly, like every day, but also in terms of their life goals, their plans to help them?
Well, because again, it's very multidimensional and very fluid and moving all the time. It's to find a way, and there's a website where you can do part of this. It sort of teases and asks, sees if you want to buy more, but astro.com, which is full name, is actually Astro Deans. But if you put in astro.com, some of the very best astrologers in the world run that site. Site. Liz Green, Robert Peltier, Robert Hand. I mean, they're really the giants right now in Western astrology.
Is there anything that you'd like to mention to our audience before we wrap up for today?
I just want to add one more thing that I'm always reminding clients of above the temple at Delphi in Greece, the ancient oracle temple. Carved in Greek is the expression, know thyself. And that's where our power truly lies.
Self-examination is sometimes the hardest things to do, but it's one of the most important.
But again, astrology is a wonderful tool because you can't fake what's going on in the wheel.
That's true. You can't change when you were born.
Yes, but you can develop all of that.
Right. Well, thanks so much, Jan. This was really wonderful. If people want to learn more information or contact you, how can they do that?
Yes, well, 2 ways to contact me are through my website, which is as one word, caretakingthesoul.com, and my phone number is 303-530-3175. And thanks.
Great. Thank you for coming. And of course, I'll post all this information on my website, which is www.healingpowers.net, and I'll also post our contact information. Thanks so much, and thanks for watching.